Welcome to the Startup Grind.
All right, welcome everybody to Hacker Studios. Who's here for the first time? Woo. Wow, lots of new people. Who's running a startup or working towards one or hoping to be? All right, so lots of entrepreneurs and potential entrepreneurs here. Welcome to Hacker Studios. For those of you who haven't been, we're downtown London startup hub. We've got space here for fast-growing companies, growing from single person hiring their first employee, freelancers, nonprofits, but especially companies that are growing from like 1 to 6, 1 to 7 people. And that's kind of relevant to at least my background with the speakers today. So talk to Amanda, talk to myself. We're the founders here at Hacker Studios. If you want to learn more about the space, we're happy to give you a bit of a walking around tour. Some of the people here are also members and big supporters and people that we're big supporters of. So by all means, we'd love to share you more about that. But welcome today to Startup Grind. I'm going to get out of the way in a second. I'm just calming down the crowd and breaking up the conversations. So I'm Joel Adams. This is Amanda Stratton. We're Hacker Studios. Amanda is also an expert in startup communities and working with cities across the country in her role with Startup Canada. So she works with entrepreneurs literally from coast to coast, and in some cases experts from around the world. And she's our chapter director here in London for Startup Grind, a Silicon Valley-based fireside chat, startup networking event that we're really privileged to host here at Hacker Studios. So please give a big round of applause for Amanda for bringing this to Canada, bringing this to London, Ontario. And of course, Amanda's going to be doing all the heavy lifting here in just a second, but she's asked me to make a special introduction to our guest speakers, our guests tonight, that she'll be interviewing, you'll be asking questions of towards the end of the evening. Stephanie and David Ciccarelli, co-founders at voices.com. I won't go into an extended intro because you'll learn all about the business and all about their business philosophy. But I had the privilege to work with them almost from the very beginning. They started up at Western's Research Park in their early days, and they took over, single office, hired the first couple of people, kept growing the business, and eventually kicked me out of my office, took it over as they grew so quickly when I used to be up there. So I had a real privilege to kind of work with them in those early days and watch them grow and learn from them. And really the only other thing I want to say, you'll learn the rest, is that Steph and David are really two of the best entrepreneurs that I know that I've come across. I've worked with hundreds, I've taught hundreds. They're amazing people. They run voices.com excellently, but you could throw them into any business and they could turn it into something amazing. So tonight, it's about voices.com, it's about their story, but it's also about learning about their business philosophy and approach to business. So keep that in mind for the Q&A. David and Steph are amazing Londoners, amazing people, amazing entrepreneurs. So with that, let's see a big standing ovation for our guests. Get up, everybody.
Thank you. Oh, thanks, guys.
So thanks. So,
all right.
And now over to Amanda and our guests.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We don't really know what we're in for, by the way, so
No?
be nice.
No way. I do want to start, not strictly for academic reasons, with a little bit about your background before you started Voices.
Sure. Go ahead, Steph.
All right, well, I was a voice major at the University of Western Ontario, now called Western. My degree says otherwise. But anyway, that's how I started. Essentially, I was always singing, and I was an original kid. If anyone here is familiar with that theater troupe, I went to choir schools, and I was an Amabile youth singer. So my background has always been in the arts.
And I think I was the kid that was always an entrepreneur, selling lemonade and on the street corner and pop out of my locker at school for $1 a piece. But the more kind of formal education, if you will, it's not all street sense, was going to the Ontario Institute of Audio Recording Technology. So that's a school that is designed to help people that are either musicians or passionate about the engineering side of recording and mixing and ultimately producing music.
Okay, so this leads me to the question I've always wanted to ask you guys. How on earth did the two of you start a company that's based entirely on a website because neither of you said that you're programmers or developers.
Right.
How did you do that?
Yeah, it's funny because I think there's a certain kind of story that we often tell, but we'd love to kind of tell the story behind the story because I think that's a lot more interesting. Truth be told, the part that might be familiar, but for those who aren't, I after graduating opened up this small recording studio here in London, and got my name in the newspaper on my birthday. That said, had this picture of me with his laptop, and it was this kind of novel concept, and because of that newspaper article, Stephanie, as she mentioned, was this classically trained singer who would sing at weddings and special events, and I think your mom was quite the savvy marketer because she said, well, Stephanie, rather than going and kind of auditioning for people, why don't you get a demo CD done so that you could hand it out to prospective, clients, if you will. And so when she saw this newspaper article, she cut it out of the Free Press and apparently left it on your bed and said, go record with this guy. And Stephanie, you sent me a few emails. Apparently you're too nervous to give me a call or something. And so you ended up coming in, and we hit it off, and we did the recording. And because of that same newspaper article, there were other small businesses in town. There was like a hair salon company that wanted a radio commercial, and a local event management company that wanted a phone system, and both of them wanted a female voice. Well, I only knew one girl in the city, so I call up Stephanie and I said, do you think you can come read this page of script for me? And we'll kind of, I like to say that we'll split the money, but she doesn't remember that part. And so we were officially in business together, and and that's where we realized, well, hey, look, if we're doing voiceovers in London, Ontario, there's probably a much bigger market out there. Why don't we put together this kind of website? And literally it was all in Dreamweaver, and we just kind of like used a WYSIWYG editor and kind of hacked together literally our first.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
How did you?
It was literally, I'm like, how do you, what do? You register a domain name? Okay, I figured that part out. And then, it just, I think I don't know, probably downloaded some version of Dreamweaver that I wasn't supposed to, but I was like the only thing that, you could build websites with at the time. And literally just kind of drag and drop text and images, and it was a horrible website, but it worked. And the interesting thing is, because of that website, we would get people from all around the world that would contact us, and somehow they I knew enough about kind of search engine optimization, at least the notion of like how do you market a website on the web. And we would get people that would say, oh, I need, if you need somebody who speaks French, do you think I can list my name on your website? Because Stephanie's name was there, and as like the one female voice, and then and like a link to like they could hear your voice, and then somebody was like, yeah, you need somebody who does character voices, and somebody who's in New York, and somebody who's in LA. If you need somebody, then give me a call or send me an email. And we're like, yeah, sure, we'll put your name on our website. And we ended up having a couple dozen people, and that was like the big moment where we're like, oh my goodness, there's totally an opportunity here. Why don't we get out of the production business ourselves, and think about, why don't we build a marketplace that kind of connects all these people together, the clients that are looking for anything from a commercial or a voice for a video game or a voice for like a movie or an explainer video, with the voice actors that we had on the website, which at the time was just a few dozen. But the story behind the story that I really want to tell is that the reason we had to do all that is that we had been renting out this kind of condo downtown, and our landlord didn't cash any of the checks for like months and months and months. Like it was like 6 or 7 months. It was like probably $6,000 or $7,000 like at that point. We're like, maybe they just forgot about us, and then all of a sudden, boom, they cashed them all at once. And I remember we were in Old South, and we were even like just ridiculous. We were like thinking, oh, we're gonna buy a house in Old South, and like totally like we were making no money at all. And we tried to get a coffee, and we didn't even have like $1.40 to like buy a coffee at the Little Red Roaster or whatever. And we were just like, what happened? And we just panicked, and we realized that we had literally no money at all. And then we went back and found out that they cashed all these checks. So we're like, okay, we are totally starting from scratch. We are scrambling. What is the fastest way that we can make thousands of dollars that we can kind of get caught up? And honestly, that's kind of where the idea was like, okay, how are we going to do a whole bunch of voiceovers? We're like, well, let's just get out of this production business and build this like virtual marketplace. It was out of necessity, honestly, than anything else. And I thought, well, if we put a PayPal button on our website and we send out email to these voice talent that were already listed, and maybe we'll do some searches around and kind of get other people. We literally just created this long form sales letter and said, basically it was all a huge big promise of like, we promise to market you and it's this new service, and like we have all the skills and tools that we feel that we can promote you as a voice actor, you know, all for a small annual membership fee of $49. And it was a link to a PayPal button. And literally after sending, you know, a few of those out, we're like, people started to buy these $49 a year subscriptions. We're like, what? People are buying stuff over the internet? Like they've never even spoken to us. And then we did that like till all hours of the night. And I remember we woke up and we ended up making like, I still think it was like $5,000 like that weekend. It was in the thousands anyways.
So
we literally woke up with all this money in our PayPal account. We're like, okay, this is it. We've done something.
So where some people would be like, maybe we should borrow some money from your parents. You guys were like, let's just start a world-class
I think we were embarrassed. We're like, how did we mismanage our money so poorly? And
It wasn't mismanagement though, because
it was just shocking. It was there.
takeout.
Yeah, we didn't spend it. We knew enough not to spend it. That's right.
See, and you guys were pretty young.
Yes,
Sure.
yeah, we had been married now for 11 years.
Mhm.
So this would have been when we had already had one child, when we basically, oh gosh, it's just over 10 years ago that
Mhm.
all of this sort of thing in 2004
Mhm.
is the year that we opened the marketplace in
Mhm.
February. So
So we were in our
That-
young 20s, if you will.
yes.
Yeah. So were there a lot of competitors in that market at the time?
Not really. I
anybody
would
else?
say that there was an article. I remember reading this article in. We went to Business Depot for some reason, and they had like this free magazine that they gave out, and we actually learned about this other lady that was doing voiceovers, and she was in Toronto or something. We're like, wow, we could totally do that, you know? Like we're doing that right now. Like we have the equipment.
Well, it validated.
Yeah,
what we
for
were
sure.
doing.
Like we had the equipment, and we're like, so we called her, and she ended up coming on the website as well too. So as Stephanie said, like it validated the market, and it was just so fragmented that there was all these individuals and kind of freelancers that were doing the type of work. I was a big fan of eBay, so I thought, well, what if we could do kind of like an eBay style marketplace where you kind of bring everybody together? And I think that was kind of the idea. So there was competition, but let's call that the old way of doing business.
Right.
Mhm.
So do you now, I assume there are other people trying to copy what you did,
Yeah.
right? What's your attitude toward competitors? Do you pay attention to that? Do you just focus on what you're doing?
I think we kind of go through waves of, well, I know at least I do personally. I think you tend to kind of dismiss, and you're not worried about that. My view is you can look at the world through the lens of everyone is your competitor, and you're freaked out all the time. You never want to share your ideas or your data or new discoveries. Or you can view world fundamentally through a creative lens, in which case I'm going to build new relationships. I'm going to view everyone as a potential partner. And I think that's more how we look at things now, because in the earliest days, I think we knew we had a better product, and there was, really kind of one other company that was kind of doing what we were doing at the same time. And I just remember we just got so worked up, and we were just, I was jealous that they got all this publicity, and it was like, that should be us. And it just took a long time for kind of us, I think, to win the hearts of the market over.
Well, it's a certain level of maturity, I think, that you reach as a business person where you don't feel threatened
Mhm.
by someone else in your space, because you know that what you're doing is unique, and this is what we do that differs from what they do.
Mhm.
And really, when people watch what you do, and if they like you, they're going to do business with you. It's not about who else is out there necessarily. It's about doing what you do best and to share that with everyone else.
So how much, even now that you guys have like a web platform
Mhm.
and a marketplace for that, how much do you still have personal relationships with your clients? And
Wow, I've got a lot of Facebook friends will tell you that. So there are a number of customers, I think, from the earliest days that we are still in touch with. And certainly as that number grows and grows, there are more names to have to write on the old whiteboard, or the CRM in this case,
Yeah, I should-
Salesforce.
Let me tell a story about that. It's funny because what Stephanie's referring to is when again, we had no background and no business knowledge and so forth. So how we organized this list of customers was this giant whiteboard that we put up in the office, which was like a dinette nook in the, I shouldn't even call it an office. It was like,
our condo.
yeah, it was our condo. Yeah, and it was this dinette, and we had this whiteboard put up there, and literally a toll-free phone number kind of piped into the office as well, into this little space, we call it the office. And we would write people's names on this whiteboard, and that was like our first customer relationship management system of like, okay, when somebody would call in, we would like scan down the whiteboard to like find the person's name and like put like a little tick mark that they phoned, and like it was just so primitive. Oh yeah, it was hilarious.
Well, we knew their names because we had hand coded all of their profiles up to a certain point before we enlisted the help of a developer.
Yeah.
So we did know them quite well in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. And they would call us and ask us what's going on. But I mean, you raised, I think, a really great point there about the importance of maintaining relationships with the earliest customers. And I think to your credit, Steph, I mean, you've done such a great job with that, whereas, and I should clarify, because it's this kind of, we have two different customer groups, right? The voice actors and then these clients, these businesses. And we actually decided even early on of like, okay, how are we gonna divide responsibilities, kind of who's doing what? And Stephanie, you've been always the voice talent girl, and I've always been the client guy. So that's, you know, and they, even to this day, I think still ask for customer service and will message you and phone your mobile phone, and you're just a lot more close to them. Whereas because my kind of side of the business, if you will, is more B2B and businesses and corporations, like they just, it's more of a utility to them as opposed to a lifeline and a community. So Stephanie's been the community champion.
David's also focused on our internal customers, which of course are those people who work with us. So in that way, he's been more of the internal face of the company, and I'm more of the external face to the customers.
I'm Wizard of Oz. I hide behind the curtain.
I do want to ask, and because we've actually talked about this with David, and he was really helpful to Joel and I at one time. When you co-found a company, it gets to a point where, you know, both of you don't do everything together anymore. How did you guys work out co-founder roles? Because I think that's something that a lot of startups deal with early on.
Yeah, we were given the advice to, just broadly speaking, put something on paper. So our way of doing that was literally an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper with a T right in the middle of it with Steph's name on one side and my name on the other, and we just like kind of wrote out who was doing what. And I think, you know, we kind of, it was a discussion. It was, you know, oh, well, actually, Steph, I mean, even now, I think that still holds true. I understand that Steph's going to be clearly better at being, you know, the face of the company out with the voice actors, and I'm happy to do kind of the business conference circuit and talk about different things because that's where our passions and interests lie. So I think that's an important first step, is understanding what you're good at and taking ownership and responsibility for that, and then not kind of literally crossing that line, even if it's just a line on paper. You know, even though we were married and you know, don't see kind of doing anything else, we actually did write an employment contract. It was like the partnership contract of, which was just like a few, I mean, it was like a few paragraphs, and we just kind of made it up. It wasn't legal speak or anything like that. It was this like, it almost sounded like, it really sounds cheesy, but it almost sounded like wedding vows. It's like, I vow to do this, this, and this, and this, and I will promise to do this, that, and the other. And then I remember we kind of like held on to that paper. I don't know where it is now, but we kind of held on to that paper for, you know, a good time, where it's like, okay, remember the agreement we made, remember the agreement. And we would always kind of point to that as like the founding document that kind of set out the rules of how we would engage with each other.
And how much has that changed as the company has grown and you have more people that take on other responsibilities? Like, how have you managed adding people?
Well, the scariest hire was the first one, right? And because we did want to do everything ourselves, and it wasn't really until we moved into the research park, and you know, Stephanie has been able to, you know, we now have 4 kids, so you know, I think we've been both raising a family and a business at the same time, and so that kind of became clear that we needed somebody else to help us in the earliest days, literally just to handle the phone calls, and because something we did differently from the get-go was we actually put this toll-free phone number at the top of the website, and it was actually at the top of every page on the website. Well, rolling back kind of 10 years, how many websites had phone numbers, let alone toll-free phone numbers available anywhere in North America? Like, everyone was like, no, send us an email, and you have to fill out these crazy forms, and they always broke, and they always had like a cancel button or clear forms. Like, why is there a clear button on a web form? That just drives me crazy. So this notion of a toll-free phone number on a website was like mind-blowing to people. So they would call us literally just to like
See if we were
see
real.
if we're a real
Really?
organization. Like, I'm thinking about buying your service, and I just want to talk to somebody there. And we would always answer the phone so professionally that they thought it was like a 500 person, big conglomerate, and it was kind of funny that way. And so, yeah, I mean, that was the first hire. I think was scary because we were afraid of the legal implications and doing payroll, and literally we just kind of paid ourselves if there was any money left over, which there never was. And so you kind of had to have enough confidence that there was enough cash flow coming in that we could support that. And I think after that initial hurdle, getting an employment contract, well then it literally was kind of like, oh great, well we will save as this employment contract for the next person that we needed help with. And it was always, and we were talking about this today, that expanding the team is always out of success. It's never out of we are failing in this thing and we let's put more time and energy towards it. That's the first way to kind of destroy everything, is like kind of throwing good money after bad, so to speak, right? We always hire people in roles where it's just flourishing, and we're trying to accelerate that process. And so kind of that was the same principle, back, as we say, 10 years or so, that we wanted to bring people on board because we saw the first fruits that were just kind of coming through, and we're like, okay, let's go after that.
So how did you know? Was it 6 months in a row we have enough money to hire somebody, so okay, let's hire somebody? Or how did you make that decision to make the first hire? What was there? Did you have a formula that you used?
I think we were just, no. I mean, the one office that we had at Research Park, so around this time we kind of, it was just getting to be too much. We had a young baby, and, doing babies and toll-free phone numbers in the same building is just, it's same kind of 800 square feet was just too much, and babies crying in the background was not cool. And especially when we had this amazing image that we were this 500 person company, so we had to kind of keep that up. And so that was, we were on the list to get into the Research Park, and once we kind of had the one office, I'm like, oh, there's totally enough space for 2 people in here, and the phone is ringing, and I was doing a lot of customer service, and it's the old, Michael Gerber talks about this, and the E-Myth books about this notion of working on your business, not necessarily in your business. And I felt all I was doing was working in the business, and that's all Stephanie was doing, email support, and I was doing, and we were approving the job postings that come to the website, and I was doing all the phone support. And I'm like, we're not getting anywhere. We're just trying to keep up with so to kind of take that next big step and start kind of proactively marketing, then that's when we kind of needed help. And it really has been, okay, well, now that person's frankly overwhelmed and swamped because things are going so well. So I think that's a key, is hire when you need to, not because you think that you might get busy in the future. That's again one of those surefire disasters, is hire because you just don't have time to come up and get air. It's you just need to have extra hands. And that way that there's going to be enough work to go around. It's we've gotten ahead of ourselves sometimes and needed to kind of scale back and be find out, we've made bad hiring decisions in the wrong time and the wrong people, and people trying to, take advantage of us, and the other way around. We're young and we don't know what we're doing. So hopefully we've got it a bit better down now, but it's taken a while.
Cool. I think that's good advice. I think the classic mistake is hire a salesperson and have nothing to sell, right?
For sure.
I do want to talk a little bit about, because David, you went to California,
Mm-hmm.
which we can talk about, but I'm actually really interested because it happens a lot in Canadian startups that they end up having, you know, a London office and a Toronto office and a California office. You know, Waterloo's a little more manageable. How being the two of you split for 3 months, right?
Yep.
Split on 2 different countries, running a company together. How did you do that? Did you just run it while he was gone, or?
Well, I signed a lot of checks. I think
There was a lot of FaceTime calls.
yeah, there were a number of those. I mean, I was clearly the person, the co-founder, that was still there. So if something needed to be done, I was doing it. At this point in time, though, I was not full-time in the office, not entirely, because our youngest will just be 3 in the summer.
Oh.
And so I've, you know, obviously we have 4 kids, so I spend a lot of time at home. And it's great. And I've just been back in the office full-time now for about 2-3 months, really, where I feel like I'm really there. But there was an awesome team that was in place as well. So it's not as if it was just me there alone running the ship. We had our VP of sales and VP of finance. They were there and able to work with their teams, and you checked in with whoever you needed to, whenever you needed to. And he was very much accessible, even though he was, you know, very far away. So
I think that's an important point, is like understanding that there was a phase where it was like everything ran through Stephanie and I. I think we might have been maybe 20, 25 employees at that stage, and it was just too much. I mean, everything from time off requests to employment agreements to just special you know what I mean? Like just kind of, is it okay if I leave early today kind of thing? Or like, you know, so we ran an anonymous employee engagement survey through a third-party consultant, the Achievement Center here in London, and through that, one of the outcomes was like David and Stephanie need to kind of continue with the vision and drive the company forward and establish a leadership team, and that's exactly what we did. So that's where this kind of VP type role came from. And I think that was kind of, again, one of those breakthroughs where up to that point, it would have been totally overkill to have a VP of finance or a VP of sales or VP of whatever, technology or whatever role. But at the right time, it totally made sense. And now, you know, again, we can continue to build out the market and kind of, you know, cast the vision and inspire everyone to kind of working towards that. And they can really manage the day-to-day. I think, you know,
well, we like to take calculated risks, not stupid risks. So when he went, we obviously knew what we were getting into, but we had people in place and everything was going well. So it made sense to afford him the opportunity for that brief time.
So a lot of people kind of take off a couple of years after they start their startup and go to California for a little while. Do you recommend that, or not so much?
Well, I mean, I think we can, this was a unique situation. So I went through 48 Hours in the Valley was the program through the C100, which is a great opportunity. If those of you in the audience can get a chance to pursue that, definitely would. And it's literally just a kind of road trip around, you know, Silicon Valley, San Francisco, and you know, that was what they call the taste the market, and you're only there for enough time just to kind of like, oh, great, I got a flavor for it. But then the extended 3-month engagement was the Canadian Technology Accelerator, so that was done through the Canadian Consulate, and that was really just kind of an extended stay. So you do, you know, it's I mean, it's a fascinating environment, and I think we certainly kind of picked up a lot of ideas. And Stephanie came down to celebrate our 10-year wedding anniversary, so it was, you know, it was a lot of fun, and I think the ideas that came, you know, that came from that experience. One of my mentors down there was director of marketing at Facebook, and we kind of revamped the entire kind of go-to-market strategy. Like, here's how we're positioning Voices.com, and this idea of kind of moving up market on higher end clients. I mean, all that kind of came from that period, and that's like literally only in, I would say, like the last 12 months. Like the growth was consistent, but then it just goes like that. And the last year has been really crazy, and I would say like doubled in size in the last year, if not more so.
Kind of bridge the gap.
Yeah, for sure.
So now that you guys are moving up market to higher end clients, does that leave an opening for somebody else to take the other market, or are you guys still?
Well, I
there
think,
too.
yeah, I think the Chris Anderson, I believe, is the author of The Long Tail, which is a great book, by the way. I'm sure most of you have read it. And the premise, I mean, he gives is like in any given market, there's going to be kind of the this, you know, kind of XY graph of like on the top end of the market, there's, you know, very few, whether let's use example music or movies would be probably better. Very kind of few blockbusters, right, that sell. And then on the other very end of the market would be like at-home hobbyists, people that don't even record anything, but they just kind of learn to play an instrument. And in the middle of that is this like, you know, kind of curve of album sales or movie sales, right? And so you have people that do this kind of like, you know, B-list movies that never kind of go anywhere, and then you kind of like, it's just this tail of producers and, you know, professionals and semi-pros that just goes out almost indefinitely. Same thing with like book sales, you have the blockbusters and so forth. And I think in our industry, you're gonna have your A-list celebrities, the Morgan Freeman and the, you know, Mike Myers and, you know, the people that are doing things for Disney and Pixar, and they're always going to be kind of the New York's and LA kind of talent agencies that just cater to the highest end of the market, and really the kind of Super Bowl commercials and so forth. But in the book, it kind of talks about this like chunky middle, and I think we can totally dominate that chunky middle. And it's just this, you know, at the other end is like the free work, and you know, we don't really want to dabble in that. It's just like let's kind of cover this space off, and I think that's a great visual for getting clear about like where do you fit within the whole market. I mean, often referred to as like positioning, right? And so I think we need to get clear on that. Is that we don't need to necessarily worry about the celebrities. I mean, that would be like a dream, but I think for the time being, this is enough of a big opportunity that we can just tackle that.
That's Duncan Stewart, I think is his name, from Deloitte,
Mhm.
and he did his tech predictions last week. I think he called it the mass niche.
Mm-hmm.
That there's these niche markets that may be a tiny portion of the full market, but they're actually still like huge markets.
For sure.
So it's a good place to be, probably.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, when it comes to digital media, and there's only 4 form factors that it can take. Digital media as a whole can be audio, video, images, or text, meaning like the words on the page or the words on the screen. And you know, video is, you know, clearly very highly visual, very engaging. Same thing with images, and text is so easily consumed, either in 140-bit character kind of bytes, or you know, long form, you know, articles and so forth. Where audio, I think, has some trouble in terms of a market, where while it's generally underserved, is that it's hard to consume in terms of like you can't scan it, and it also plays a supporting role to video in most parts. And so that's why I don't think there's, you know, aside from, you know, SoundCloud and, you know, Spotify, and I think kind of like the next wave of internet radio stations, there isn't like thousands and thousands of like audio startups, and particularly with voice, the kind of human element of the story that's being told. I think that's where it is a big market. It's a $20 billion market worldwide, but it's just such a small niche where people are like, what? There's an industry of people that talk and like into a microphone and they read scripts. I'm like, yeah, it's been going on for like 50, 60, 70 years, right? And here's just a faster, easier way to get it done is through a web platform. And then it starts to kind of make sense, but it's like, you don't really think about the voice in the bus or the elevator or the GPS. Like there's somebody that actually had to read words on a page. And so I think, you know, again, back to that positioning thing, it's like, okay, if we can just kind of keep focusing on this small sliver of the world, then we won't get distracted with the next kind of bright, shiny object that's out there.
While we're on the topic of marketing, Joel didn't mention that you guys have won like an insane amount of awards. And this is maybe a tacky subject to talk about, but I'm going to anyway, because I work with a lot of startups and like startup community builder type people, and they always say like, oh, we can apply for awards. Like, yes, you can apply for awards. You don't have to sit there and wait for somebody to decide that you deserve an award.
Well, no one's going to come to you and just hand one to you.
But a lot of people think that's what happens,
Yeah.
right? So how important is, because you guys obviously apply for a lot of awards, to your kind of marketing strategy and continuing to build that community that you have?
Well, you're the chief marketing officer, so I'll let you answer that one.
How kind. Well, I think awards are great because they're a recognition, essentially, of what you've done. There are awards that will be more meaningful than others, depending on what you do, perhaps what your own industry has in store for awards is more meaningful than, say, getting an award from the city, from the Chamber of Commerce. Like, it all depends. I think that there's
Your
different
bio
kinds
says that your
of
London
awards.
Chamber of Commerce award is one of the ones that you're most honored to
We
have.
are.
We certainly are, because, well, I was born here in London, so it means a great deal to me. And my great-grandfather was an entrepreneur as well, and it's kind of sprinkled down throughout the generations. So it's neat to kind of continue that on.
I didn't mean to interrupt you though. So if you were talking about the importance of industry-specific
Sure.
awards and
Yeah, well, because I think being recognized by the people around you in the local business community is certainly a wonderful thing. But for other people, then maybe they want to be recognized by those who they do work with, as
Like
opposed
industry
to
associations.
who fosters the
Mhm.
business in town. So, for instance, there is NAB. They had a conference a couple of weeks ago. It's all the broadcasters essentially are getting together, and they have a big party, and they learn about all the new gear and all the gadgets, and this is what you can do, and this is how media is changing, and the different ways people access content. And anyway, they honored people, and they have like a hall of fame for what they do. And so if someone were to be honored by an organization like that is part of their industry, that could be very meaningful as something for their own career, in terms of, I'm a professional in this field, and I have been singled out, in this case, by my peers, which is
Right.
different from, being singled out as someone who has done something to help build up a community, which is great and wonderful, but not everyone is going to be running an 80, 150 person even company. Sometimes you're a small startup and you're known more in your industry than you are locally.
right.
So I think to answer your question in terms of to expand on what Stephanie mentioned on a tactical basis, we do, there's almost become a bit of a formula to it. I mean, we find that if we're gonna do something once, then we think about, if we're gonna do it twice, then we think about how are we gonna do this 100 times, and start to, it's this notion of, we talk about business philosophy and during the intro, is this idea of 10x, right? So it's like, almost anything we do now, we think of, okay, if we're gonna do this 10 times more than we're doing it now, let's start to kind of build a process around that. And to be honest, awards is actually one of those things. So from a marketing standpoint, we have award templates and award collateral of like, what do you do for community engagement? What do you do for, being part of like high schools, or, we have like kind of almost like canned paragraphs already prepped on deck, so that we can actually send out a lot of applications. So our conversion rate's probably horrible. It's just that we send out a lot, and so therefore, we kind of throw our hat in the ring more times than we care to admit. And then you go through dry spells and you don't win anything, and then you just like, well, that's cool. We learned something through the process because the judges come back and go, we like this, we think this is an area that you guys need to improve upon. So we'll take that and we'll work on it for next year. And it actually ends up rounding out the company as a whole, because we go, oh, well, we actually need more internal human resources processes, for example. Or, what is our recruiting strategy, right? What are we doing here? And then it kind of triggers a lot of questions that allow us to, it's almost like getting kind of, in a sense, like free outside consulting of like, they're obviously judging what world-class companies look like, so how can we, model ourselves more after that? That's why I think there's no kind of harm in submitting the award applications, because if you get them, awesome. If not, you learn how do you need to improve and how do you need to shape your company and then your story as well too.
Well, that, and if you don't like to write copy, if you don't write and you're kind of not into that, if you go through the process of completing these massive forms, then you can actually have something you can put on your website. Oh, now I've got an About Us paragraph. Now I've got who we are and what our culture is like, and this is how we can attract more people to work with us. Or you can have like, this is our process for this and that. And so it can either help you to build content for your website, but it can also perhaps help you to build out an internal document for HR.
Kind
So
of narrow
like an
your
employee handbook
Mhm.
or some kind of a business plan, even if you haven't gotten that far, and adding different sections in.
Yeah, we're really big on like repurposing existing content that we've already written once. Like if we put in the thought to write something once, then it literally gets cataloged into like a Google Doc. So like publicity with media and kind of newspapers and magazines and so forth. We literally, this is total secret sauce, but we'll share it nonetheless because I think it's great advice. Is we literally have
We won't tell anybody.
this massive document called the Publicity Handbook. and it's like the PR pitch book of every pitch that we've ever made, and it has this giant table of content. So it's like women in startups, husband-wife teams, you know, starting a company when you're pregnant, starting a company with a baby, and like
Really?
it has all of these like mini stories, and we pitch those, and they get pitched to like lifestyle magazines and the Globe and Mail, and you know, and sometimes they catch. It might be, oh, they happen to have something on the go, or like people end up reaching out and like, oh, we're thinking about writing a story about, you know, husband and wives that, you know, got into business and it's Valentine's Day or something, and it's like they will come, like, you know, and we end up landing these kind of oddball stories where it's not necessarily talking about voices.com other than like the tagline.
Right.
We're like, that's awesome, we'll take it. They introduce us to the broader business community.
Do you use any services like Help a Reporter Out? Or
Yes.
Help a Reporter Out is awesome.
Yes, we love Harrow. It's the best thing ever.
Mhm.
But if you're pitching like every day and you're actually looking for opportunities that you're a good fit for, then it's very useful. But don't send out for just anything that you think, because the reporters can actually rate your responses. So they can say, yeah, that was good, I used it, or nah. So obviously you don't want to get like the,
You get a bad
Right.
feedback
you know
score.
what, because
yeah.
then you're I suppose you would show up lower in the queries, and maybe they wouldn't keep you on, depending on how irrelevant your pitches are. But essentially every pitch that we had done through there, especially if it was one where we were successful, we would copy and paste that and be like, okay, this is look for a template for how we even pitch somebody,
Yeah.
and tell them about ourselves and give
So we
them a
keep
little
all
bit
of our winning
yeah.
pitches. Yeah.
This is really great advice for anybody whose claim to fame is still featured on TechCrunch.
Yeah.
Everybody's been on TechCrunch.
Right.
It's like having a birth certificate.
Yeah.
You guys have been on TechCrunch,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We haven't. I think that we'll probably open it up for Q&A.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to, is there anything else that you didn't get a chance to talk about? I'm just looking at the time, and
Oh,
I think we only
goodness.
have about 10 minutes left.
Yeah, no,
Wow.
we've just been
This
talking
went
away.
faster
Yep,
than I thought
yep,
it
for
would.
sure. No, we've, you know, I think there's, one thing I did want to mention is I think it's for those that maybe are considering starting a company, you know, with your spouse or significant other. I mean, I think that's, was really challenging for us, to be honest with you, because everyone views us as this like mom and pop shop and no one took us seriously. And I think that was something that, you know, certainly with enough determination, you can get through. Not to say that there isn't, you know, we, you know, live, eat, and breathe, and sleep this business, and this is all we kind of think about in a lot of ways, and kind of needing to balance that with our, you know, the kids. It's challenging, but I think there's so many benefits of like, we know what we're talking about. You know, it's like the relationships, you know, that are formed in the work environment. We know kind of who the people are and the context and their backgrounds, and we have this kind of, going back to the shared vision idea of like where we're going together in our professional careers. So I think there's a lot of benefits on that side that outweigh any kind of potential cons of like, oh my goodness, we have to think about this all the time.
Was there a tipping point? Like, was it a number of employees or something where you felt like people stopped seeing you as a mom and pop and you're a real company now? Or
That's a
I've
great question.
never had that problem, in that perception. I've never had that feeling. I think that's something you
That's
need
because
to
I'm the one going to the bank asking for the money on how to grow the company, and they just don't take us seriously.
Well, it was more about our age for a very long time, because I got married to David when I was 20 years old, and he was 23, just turned 24. And so it's been a long journey for us, and I think in these days, banks and people in general are far more forgiving of young entrepreneurs and giving them chances
Totally.
than they were in 2003, in 2002, really.
Yeah.
But I think that's been our biggest challenge, but as you see, most things become better with age. So we just find that I think that we've overcome a lot of those challenges, and maybe it was more our youth than the fact that we were married
right.
that I think was a little bit of a hesitation for.
Have you guys had any funding or anything other than bank loans? Have you?
No, so I think that's something else that I'm not sure if it was necessarily strategic on our part or whatnot. So Stephanie and I remain the two sole shareholders of the company. And I kind of jokingly say not for lack of trying with venture capitalists, but we get calls to be perfectly honest, like probably once a week from a different analyst or some associate at some firm. It's kind of just poking and prodding and trying to see if there's like, what's your revenue and how many people work there and how do you view the industry, and there's a degree of, you know, you want to maintain those relationships because I think when the time comes, you want to be able to kind of act in a big way. But I think, you know, we enjoy kind of the control and the autonomy that we have to kind of run the company the way we want
It
it.
would have to be the right fit.
Exactly.
It's extremely important, and it's, as he says, not for lack of trying. People have tried to buy us before.
Mm-hmm.
People have tried to do things, but if it's not in line with our vision and our brand and our values, then we can't do business with them.
And that's happened where we needed to go like, yeah, it's not gonna fly with us.
But you did say when the time comes.
Yeah.
Is
And when
the-
and if,
Yeah.
and when.
Do you guys eventually?
I think more of
want
an
to-
I think an investor situation would be a lot more likely because you can only grow, and this is kind of what we're realizing now, is like you can only grow a company so fast with cash from operations, right? And so broadly speaking, you need capital from somewhere. It's either debt, in which case you're borrowing money from a bank or a government loan or something along those lines, or it's equity, in which case you're selling a portion of your company. And so we have funded the company entirely from debt, where it's just loans and then pay them down, or pay them off completely and then go, well, great, let's get another loan. And we've done that enough times, like honestly, we've probably gone through a dozen loans, that there's such an amazing track record where it started with like a $15,000 loan, and then it was a 20, and then 25, and 30, and 50, and 75, that we've just kind of gone in the hole, and so to speak, in terms of debt, and then paid it off, and then we kind of keep doing that until, I think now it's getting to the point where it's getting more and more difficult for someone to go like, yeah, sure, we'll loan you to 30-somethings $1 million, and it's like, with what security, right? There's no big building, there's no manufacturing plant, there's, we own intellectual property, and it's a software product. So I think that just kind of being honest here, that like that's what's becoming more and more challenging, is to finance the company from that perspective. But the operations itself is what's doing it mostly.
So when you do borrow money to expand, is it market development? Is it to move off the Dreamweaver website and get a real one? Not that would have been real.
Yeah.
What have you borrowed money for?
Really.
The domain name.
Yeah, the domain name was
Really?
one where we charged that. I think we ended up buying the domain name for $30,000, voices.com, and we actually ended up negotiating a deal where we would send him $5,000 every 6 months. Every quarter for the next 6 quarters. And so we charged like $5,000 to our credit card and got the domain name and started using it, which is crazy to think about.
2006.
Yeah, so it's true. You can, like, if there's a good domain name out there, you can totally buy them from the person that owns them. It's just you got to figure out a way to negotiate how to get it. You know what I mean? That people have registered them. They just sit on these like really great domain names, and they're probably willing to like, yeah, sure, I'll take $50,000 or $30,000, and yeah, sure, you can send me a few $1,000s every month, and until you sort it out. That worked for us. But mostly it's the like sales and marketing. It's just about kind of going after the market in a big way. It's advertising on Google AdWords. It's building a bigger website, writing more content, creating videos and podcasts, and it's just all about like how do we get our name out there. We had a phrase that said the old saying of all roads lead to Rome. And so he said that all links must lead to voices.com. So like we wanted everything in our industry to kind of point back to us as the epicenter of like where the business happens.
Cool.
Is that cool?
Yeah, that is cool.
Mm-hmm.
I think I can't quite read the clock. Does it say 5 to 8?
Yeah.
My timekeeper left. Can we do some questions?
Yeah,
now then?
fire
Sure.
away, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Hi.
this is Fabian. I have a quick question. So a lot of fast-growing companies in the London area, such as Big Viking Games, who started off in London, have, once they start growing a lot, problems acquiring talent. There's a certain limited talent pool within London. How do you deal with it, or is it a challenge for you as well? And how have you overcome, or are you overcome?
So the team that we're building out right now is it's called the sales and marketing front. And I think there's a lot of great organizations like Infotech from last week, Yellow Pages, Alliance I. Like there's organizations in town that are kind of recruiting and training people up with those skills of inside sales and account management. So given kind of the nature of and the stage of where we're at, we've been frankly pretty successful in terms of recruiting people, mostly because I think we do a great job of painting the picture of like what the culture is and why somebody would maybe want to work at Voices. Where I think it may be more challenging certainly is on the engineering side of things, and we've our mobile app developer came from Guelph. Then we had somebody from Chatham. So I mean, you kind of got to either bring people in or create these kind of creative work remotely agreements, if you will. So I think it just comes down to the position, to be honest with you. I don't think there's a broad stroke lack of talent by any stretch of imagination. I think it's more appropriate to say, well, it depends on what you're looking for, to be honest with you. But we don't feel in any way that we've run to the end, the well's dry, so to speak. I think the fact that Western and Fanshawe are here and the whole kind of plethora of other schools, Westervelt College and Trios and so forth, I think there are good people that come out of there. You just got to interview enough and find the right people and ask for referrals. And get out there and network, and you'll find them.
Well, I think to add to what you've said, David, we primarily hire for someone's attitude. We think skills can be taught, and if they're a good cultural fit, and if they're really enthusiastic and they have knowledge, but their skills could be built upon, then we would bring those people in over someone who was not exactly the happiest or easiest person to work with, yet was the most skilled. There's a difference between bringing someone, you're building a team, you're really building a group of people that you want to hang out with and do life with in a work environment, right? So you need to factor that in. And I think to your credit, David, you've helped to raise up a lot of people. I'm gonna cry. But just
Why? Why are you crying?
Do you guys still feel like, how many employees do you have now?
So the team's at 45,
And you
and
still
they'll almost
feel
be
like you can
almost be 50. Yeah.
That's
No, I think
awesome.
it's just
they've come from such varied backgrounds.
Yeah. So do a lot of people move on from Voices into other companies?
To be honest, I think we've been great with that. Not so much. There's been it's interesting because some folks I think have kind of done the game of I'll try here for a couple years and then it gets boring and I'll try somewhere else. And the people that are part of our team now, I think in the last year maybe 2 people have kind of gone on to greener pastures because they were so new and their dream job came up. And
Yeah.
so I understand that that's going to happen, and I just the reason why people leave a company is it's not money. It's there's lots of research on this. And it came down to one thing actually, which is why we tend to hire in groups, is because they don't have a friend in the company. And so because they don't have a friend in the company, there's no kind of personal emotional draw to staying around. They just feel like I'm unappreciated, nobody knows that I'm here, nobody knows my name. And so for our way to kind of address that, which is why we've done these crazy things like speed interviews and group interviews and this kind of thing, is because we want to get people right from first impressions to already start kind of rubbing shoulders and mingling to oh, you start at the same time, and now we have a cohort of new recruits that are these people learn everything together and they both can kind of chit chat about, or 2 or 3 or 4 people can go oh, remember our first day on the job together, and they have this whole storyline.
Yeah,
shared experiences, exactly. And so that's what we're trying to create. And it's there's an underlying story of kind of why we're doing those type of things, and that's we're trying to create those shared experiences.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm all right.
Hi, you already mentioned one of your mentors,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm wondering, because you guys started so young, who were your most important mentors? How did you meet them, and what did they help you with?
Yeah, I'll tackle this one. this will sound horribly cheesy, but honestly, my dad, and I think even today, like we're doing a FaceTime call over lunch, and Dad is someone who encouraged me not to go through business school, but rather go start a company. He's like, you know, I think like this is maybe more kind of nostalgia of like the way I remember it, but he was like, if you're gonna spend $80,000 on something, like go start a company. If you're gonna go into debt, go do that, and go learn the hard way and make all the mistakes and figure out what not to do so that you can ultimately grow into something much bigger. And you know, he was kind of crazy enough, and Mom too, to like see that through. And you know, his background in finance, I think, kind of provided that of like, you know, I want to see your budget, and I want to see like, you know, and not that he was like, you know, an investor or like there was kind of any honestly like formalized relationship in that sense, but more to someone who cared about myself and Stephanie as people, and just wanted the company to succeed. And you know, maybe he was living out his and still is in certain ways, I'm convinced of it, living out his kind of own entrepreneurial dreams and so forth through the company. But I mean, he's a really sharp guy, and so I think if you can have, you know, those people, it's just not the normal kind of mentorship relationship where like, yeah, once a month we chat. It's like, you know, he sees something or hears something or spots something or sees an opportunity or a link to an award application, or like he knows kind of what we do, or like, oh, there's this event coming up, you ever consider doing that? And I'm like, oh, that's an interesting idea. And oftentimes I'll be like, yeah, we're so busy doing this other stuff. Like, but yeah, he's just sharp, and I think we've needed to kind of set boundaries on like, you know, whether it's mentors or, you know, consultants or whoever it is. I think it's important to have boundaries around those relationships. But you know, Dad was, I guess, one of the mentors for me. Who would you say who's been guiding you? I'm interviewing now, apparently.
Well, I think I never ever saw myself as a business person, not for a very long time. Like, I sang professionally at weddings and at church, and I was teaching young children music lessons, but I don't think in the same way as David perceived myself as being a business person. I was a soloist, I was an artist, a creative who, you know, did what they loved and got paid for it. So in that sense, all of my mentors would have been my teachers. So it you know, never in a business context, but I think there were a number of people who had taught me through university at Western. Susan Eichhorn-Young is one person in particular who I would credit with probably really understanding my instrument and how I could use it. And a lot of what my teachers had taught me at Western really has come through in how I work with our customers. Just the didactic nature of going through and doing a music degree as opposed to just loving music and doing it in your free time is that you get to learn about all these different things and the context around them, and looking at text and interpreting it, and how to color the words, and all these different ways that the artist uses their gift. And I think that that's where my mentoring has taken place.
Do you see yourself as a business person now?
Oh yeah. Well, people have told me so much. But I think being married to David certainly has clarified that.
It's rubbed off on you.
But you know, like, I think it's a wonderful thing to be able to learn from people, and sometimes it isn't always the same person. There are people who come into your life for a season, maybe it's a reason, or maybe they're with you for a lifetime. So in that way, I would like to think that the mentors that I have are sometimes the people sitting beside me. It doesn't always have to be, you know, as a formalized arrangement where you go in and you see someone and they tell you stuff, and it can just be someone who's sharing something with you that's meaningful. And it could just be something that you meet someone at a lunch at some kind of an event, like at the I know I was at something for the W100, which is a great profit magazine with Chatelaine had put this on, this awards every year. They say, who are the top 100 female entrepreneurs in the country? And I happened to make the list last year. But anyway, just sitting at the table with a number of these amazing women who have, you know, they've got great achievements, but more so it's what, you know, keeps them going, and just the little things that they're sharing about life experiences, I find, that are far more useful than, oh, here's something else you can add to that marketing kit, right? So it's more about building into a person as opposed to maybe building their business.
Cool.
Mhm.
I think you had your hand up.
Mhm.
Yeah, now you mentioned SEO being a huge credit to your successes at
Yeah.
an early stage, and also your sales marketing budget, a lot of it going to Google Ads.
Yes.
Now, is that you directly specializing in Google Ads, or are you hiring out an agency to do that, or are you have a specific inside sales rep doing that?
Yeah, we've done, that's a great question. So we've done both over the years. When Google, our AdWords account actually opened in 2003, so even kind of like predates the company. I started kind of tinkering around with it. So I'm, pretty familiar with it myself. And there's certainly, I think in terms of like campaign perspective, Stephanie and I will kind of collaborate on those type of things together. But because the campaign is, the account I should say with Google AdWords is so old and has been like rebuilt a number of times over the years, it's pretty fine-tuned at this stage. So when I say we will run like a new campaign, it might be like, for this quarter, we're gonna upload these new set of banner ads, we're gonna be changing, the text on all of our ads and maybe updating landing pages. And that's gonna go like not only across Google AdWords, but also Bing ads and Facebook ads. And, there are in-house ads that sometimes we might show on the side of our blog. Like there's no external advertising. We kind of advertise our own stuff on our blog, if you will. So those are all, there's probably 7 or 8 different kind of advertising platforms that we actually use. Yahoo has some interesting ones as well too. Just kind of unknown, untapped, generally speaking, sources of traffic where there isn't industry competition that I'll hear on, TechCrunch or Tech Vibes of like, Yahoo's rolling out this new platform called Stream Ads and it's right on their homepage. I'm like, well, that looks interesting. Because I've found over the years that if you can jump on a new advertising platform right when they launch, oh man, you can score a ton of traffic so quickly because Google AdWords, we used to be able to buy traffic for 5 cents a click. Well, now it's like $1, $2, $3, right? It's just insane. Same thing with Facebook. Facebook, we built 200,000 like follower fans, if you will, over a year. And how did we get those? Because a lot of them were, paid for through our customer base of like, it was just building off of, so and so and we've targeted groups that we've created in industry. But we've done that all through advertising because we were doing it for 5 and 10 cents, a fan or a click or so forth. And then after a while, then competition comes in and it's just like, it doesn't make sense anymore.
So when you laughed at the Facebook ad campaign, is that a good laugh, or is that you're not seeing it's just too saturated now?
Well, we do love Facebook, don't get me wrong, we do. We just, I guess, when we advertised at first, it was like the glory days of advertising on Facebook. And unless you advertise on Facebook, you are not getting seen by anybody.
Yeah.
And so when you're used to seeing 500 likes, and then all of a sudden you do something that isn't advertised and it gets like 3, you think, wow, either what we're doing is meaningless, or we have to pay in order to
get the distribution,
have the visibility, and it's been like that now for quite some time.
Probably the last year, like you can just tell, like they've changed their platform enough. And anyone in advertising and marketing here will know this, that they've changed their platform. You literally do need to pay for getting that in the newsfeed of, like with promoted posts and all that. I mean, that wasn't like that even 2, 3, 4 years, 4 years ago, where it's like you could, as Stephanie says, like you could just get 1,000, 2,000 likes on something, and like your stuff would be seen all over the place.
So a huge success factor for you guys was being able to hop on that bandwagon before anyone
being
else.
early adopters on new technology. Same thing with like, whether it's like being the first in the industry to come up with a mobile app. I mean, because
Does Liz Gray work with you on that, or are you guys in contact with her?
Yeah, so Liz, we've worked with Liz in the past for sure, and spoken at her classes and so forth, and students from that have kind of worked kind of smaller campaigns, but we've always maintained our own Google AdWords account.
Yeah, I think advertising is a great thing if you are getting in front of the right people when they want to see your ad. So I think that's why Google AdWords has been really great. I think it's been the best return on our investment for any ad platform. LinkedIn ads, I think, have also been good. Twitter's been interesting, and Facebook, when you advertise, is great because you get seen by everybody. But if you're not advertising, unfortunately, and hopefully you don't derive your self-worth from whether someone likes it on Facebook. But if you do, and if I know a lot of people who are in marketing and social media, they kind of live and die by the next like and the next retweet and the next favorite. And so, but you just have to keep in mind that you may still be producing amazing content that's really of value to people. It's just that maybe you won't get that kind of feedback unless you're advertising.
Okay, so Facebook is just brand awareness, whereas Google Ads is strictly conversion.
That's a call to action for sure. And if you, I mean, this just took a lot of experimentation to figure out, but I mean, it does make sense where, Facebook for sure is brand awareness, and you're almost like kind of buying impressions, and that's actually how we measure it right now. Is like, great, we got 3 million impressions this month, and it's not going to be a source of conversions, at least for us, because we're more of a B2B. In which case, Google AdWords is amazing because what are you typing into the search box in Google? It's a problem, right? I am looking for, in our case, a voice for my next radio commercial, and then lo and behold, voices.com comes up. Oh, and you land on this looks exactly what I'm looking for, and then there's a form there and you fill it out and they're into our sales process. And I mean, that is such a well-oiled machine at this stage.
And you write their name on a whiteboard.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's right.
And we put a little tick mark beside their name. That's right. So that's why you need to, as Stephanie said, align the channels with kind of what you're trying to achieve. Yeah, great question.
Thank you.
You guys can find
To go along with that, do you guys do like A/B testing when you're doing Google AdWords so that a certain campaign you're running will lead people to like a different layout of your page to see if that's more effective than you're currently?
Yeah, for sure. So there's we do A/B testing across, and we worked with a company called the Conversion Rate Experts, and there's an amazing case study actually on the web. Where at the time Google was offering this product called Google Website Optimizer, which was like their version of A/B testing, and the case study ended up getting published on there because we had like a 400% increase in signups based upon this split test we did on our homepage. And the split test was simply, we used to, because we talked about these two different customer groups that we have, we used to kind of have this like rotating banner ad on the homepage, which is like the hero shot, and so many websites have this, or kind of, but the thing is we were finding like, even though it had this big button to sign up free, nobody was clicking on it. I think, I'm convinced like people were just watching this like thing rotate through and nobody even kind of saw the button, and then they ended up like scrolling down and like kind of going off into somewhere else on the website. Well, until we created a static version where on one side it said find voices, and learn more, and then the other side said find jobs, and then all the voice actors wanted to find the jobs, so they would click that, and it would like literally send them down two different paths, and then they were both, we could have two different messages where they're both signing up for the appropriate accounts, and that's where like, and to this day the homepage is still like that. Like we've tested a lot of different stuff, so there's testing on the website. There's definitely testing on landing pages. Every Google AdWords campaign, we're always running 2 text ads, and if we're running 2 text ads, they both go to the same landing page, because I want to know, is it the conversion rate of, if you start testing too many variables, you get kind of muddied, so you want to know, is it the text ad that got the conversion, or is it, I test on the pages that got the conversion. So we try to kind of test, simply put, we try to test one thing at a time, run it for 2 weeks, and then document results. Then you can kind of make a proper decision. Yeah, great question.
You say run it for 2 weeks, but really it's kind of the number of impressions that you're testing it on that
For
matters.
sure, yeah. And I mean, the only reason I'm saying run it 2 weeks is because honestly, sometimes it is a bit of a set it and forget it, and it's like, I'm like, okay, I know I'm going to start it on the 1st of the month, for example, and then we will revisit the test results in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. You might run so many impressions or get so many click-throughs or
some people
clicks.
might need to run for longer though.
Yeah,
to
for sure.
For it to be a meaningful,
Yeah.
statistically meaningful
Exactly.
test.
Yeah.
Cool.
If you were to hire 1 senior or 2 juniors, which would you do and why?
Oh, great question. I would say hire 1 senior, but try to hire them when they're a junior. Because I think that's what we did in a lot of ways, was find great people when they're really young and ambitious, and do life with them and raise them up. That approach hasn't let us down. But you're just, you're getting all the experience, and you're getting, less mistakes, hopefully. And, certain aspects of our team are very, very lean. Dev is one of those areas. For the longest time, we had like one sales guy who's now the VP of sales, but he was the sales guy. Then we kind of gave him a proper title called sales representative. And then he was like an account manager, and then then he was like the sales manager and sales director, and now he's the VP of sales. But it's been the same guy, Ben, and he's just amazing. And we still talk about those, like, he's like, I remember asking for the first credit card over the phone, and like just trying to make a sale to sell anything that we could, and so I mean that's the reason why I kind of jokingly say of like, find that person is like that in the long run they just have the leadership abilities within them, and they excel in everything that they're doing, and they may not have all the experience right now, but if you stick with them for long enough and you give them a reason to stay around, then you'll end up with a senior person.
So when you found that guy, you guys said you did not give up any equity with the company. How are you able to overcome him leaving just strictly on keeping the vision there for him?
Mm-hmm.
How did you incentivize him to stay for so long?
I think it's important to ask people where they want to go in their career, and most organizations I don't think spend enough time doing this, where we do a lot of, we call them heart-to-hearts or one-on-ones, where it's, whether it's a, quarterly performance review or, monthly meetings where you're spending time one-on-one going like, okay, well, just to kind of put this out there, like, what's next for you? It's like, oh, I actually plan on staying here a long time. Okay, cool. What do you plan on doing? Well, I really want to lead people. It's like, okay, well, what does that mean to you? Like, what kind of goals? And like, well, we can start to build out a team when you're hitting these metrics. And there's a promise there that, fine, we'll bring in the next salesperson once we've reached this certain sales milestone. And that's what we did. So then he kind of became the senior person, in which case there started to become a team around him. So I think it is important being super clear of like what's next for every, in our case, every employee or every candidate that we're meeting. And that's, I think today we had 3 interviews, and that question came up in every single interview. When we're asking, that stereotypical, we don't kind of phrase it this way, but the stereotypical, like, where you see yourself in 5 years type question. And if we can kind of be along the same path, or at least going, okay, well, this is, most people start at voices.com in this position, but then they go down these 2 paths, and there is a bit of a career path there. And whether it's all kind of painted out and there's a history of other people going along that path, or you're going straight up, we don't have all the answers, but we're thinking we kind of feel like it's going to go in this direction. When the time comes, I can give you, my word that right now we'll have an internal interview, and you'll at least have a seat at the table for the internal interview. So I think kind of at least laying those type of promises down, and then obviously honoring your word. I think we've done that enough times that people have kind of come to see that as to be true.
They have to like where they're working, though. So, like, you can give them a vision and promise them things, but unless you have a culture that is keeping them there, and they feel that they are valued and they're contributing, and that they are recognized by their peers, and maybe if it is a leadership desire, that they are given those opportunities to lead, then you need to give people those things, and they need to feel like they're part of the family. And I think at voices.com, it very much is a family. If you were to define our culture, that's why almost the tears, because Voices really is like a family, and that's how we see it. And
that comes up in like, we asked the team, like, how do you define the culture? And that, I think that's, I don't know, I think when we moved from Research Park to kind of having our own space and, in downtown London, like, that was all about creating culture and like making it our own space. And that, we have these banners that hang from the ceiling that have the logos of some of our best customers, like the big companies. And we do that so that that it's not just a name, and like kind of like the old whiteboard idea. Like that's why we wrote things on a whiteboard, is because we're trying to make
There's people behind the
yeah,
names
there's
and the
people
numbers.
behind the names. There's people behind these account numbers and email addresses. There's and we're trying to make it visual, because otherwise it's just all locked up in this database, right? And so we try to make it visual by printing big movie posters of our goals and hanging these banners from the rafters, like you're at the London Knights game of like, hey, here are the heroes that kind of played here. It's like, here are the hero customers that we're working with. And so the more that we can kind of make that visual, then people are like, this is a place I want to be. And that's what kind of keeps people around.
The creativity.
Yeah, good stuff. Awesome.
Are you okay to keep?
Yeah.
cool.
If people are interested, for sure.
What are you reading, David? What books are in your process right now on the desk?
Well, no word of a lie. I'm plowing my way through the Bible. That was one that kind of never.
It's a cyclical one.
Yeah, that one never ends. What do I have by the beds? There's
There's a bunch of Harvard business
Yeah,
review
there's
books
this-
by his bed.
And I think, and I should tell the story. Actually, it's funny because at one point we found out that the London Public Library had
A limit.
a limit on how many books you could take out at any one time.
Isn't it like
We
40
hit it.
books?
No,
100.
60. Was it 60 resources?
Yeah, we had 100. We had 100 books out from the library, and they're like, Mr. Ciccarelli, you realize you have 100 books out from the library? And like my bedside table was like stacks. I'm like, I gotta get some of these things back. I'm always, I think both of us are always reading, but right now it's this, it's almost like this box set from the Harvard Business Review, and they're just collections of articles on, which are great kind of 15, 20-minute reads, in my case, before bed or at piano lessons with girls or something, on leadership or collaboration or change management. It's kind of like themes, and I usually try to pull out the book on the theme that we're processing and working through as a company. So
That becomes date night. Oh, want to do a quiz?
yeah, honey, there's this great questionnaire in here, and we're gonna do the marketing report together. How are we doing on a scale of 1 to 10 on these things?
Yeah.
We're total nerds. That's what we do.
Yeah.
What are you reading, Cynthia?
What am I? Well, right now I've just started a book that was given to me by someone you may know of. If anyone remembers, a couple of years ago there was a homeless man with a golden voice who was found on the side of the interstate in Ohio, Columbus. Ted Williams is his name, and I actually had the privilege of meeting him a few weeks ago at a voiceover conference in Columbus, Ohio, and we traded books. So I have a wonderful account of Ted's journey from being on the streets for 17 years as someone who has been at his lowest and is now come out of that, and how his life has changed. So that's what I'm reading right now.
And you mentioned trading books, so I don't know if everybody knows that you guys actually wrote a book too, right?
It's one of these other stories which is interesting. People Stephanie had been writing a blog for 5 years, and people were like, oh, you should really put this in a book format. So we put together this PDF, which was an ebook, and we ended up selling it on the internet because I'm like, there's all this great information here. And we sold over 1,000 copies of this ebook for like $20-$30 or something on like just electronic downloads.
This was in early days.
Yeah, and so we sold all these ebooks, which was an answer to like, how do I get started in the industry?
Yeah.
I've been told I have a great voice, and it's like, we're tired of answering these same set of questions over and over. Back to my whole repurposing our stuff. So we like package it in an ebook and sell it to people that are interested. And then that turned into people saying, well, you should do like a physical copy. And I was at a conference and saw that Salesforce.com had this kind of handout called Salesforce for Dummies, and I'm like, that is so cool. They're taking they're like in the cloud, and they're like intangible out there, and they're taking this kind of brand and like putting it into a physical form and handing it out to customers as like a giveaway. So I thought, well, why don't we try to do Voices.com for Dummies as like a customer service resource? And then
Something we could give our customers,
yeah,
because
at
everything's
conferences.
so digital.
Yeah, at conferences and so forth. And so I actually found the division of Wiley that produces these, And I made this book proposal. I basically like asked, how do you do it? And she's like, well, send us a book proposal. And I'm like, oh goodness, like Google, how do you write a book proposal? And then, so I, ended up with this 17-page amazing document of comparing other books on the market and talked all about the industry and our customers, and that we had this ebook that was, that we'd already sold 1,000 copies of. And they said, we really think this is interesting, but we need you to resubmit the book proposal, not as voices.com for dummies, but voice acting for dummies. So kind of broaden the scope of the book. And it went from Wiley Canada to Wiley USA to Wiley Worldwide, and everybody loved it. And they ended up doing, we ended up getting the contract to write the voice acting for dummies for a full worldwide trade distribution book. And yeah, so that's what we have. So it's the Yellow and Black for Dummies book. That's what we have.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
What is your view on competition and copycats?
Yeah, we think that there are a lot of copycats that come up now because it's in a sense, I guess, proven is one way to look at it, but there's enough people kind of using it that people are like, oh, well, I think I can do that. And I think there's such a misnomer there where people glance at a website and just think that it's a website and that there's no kind of people behind it and there's no business model, and that's, it's just a bunch of machines churning away in the corner somewhere. But really there's so much more that goes into it, and we've seen those posts on Rent-A-Coder and
voices.com for $300 this weekend. That
yeah,
sort of
I
thing.
need voices. I need a clone of voices.com for $280,
Really?
and I need it done in 48 hours. It's really? We probably put in $1 million in 10 years. You're not going to be able to copy and paste what we do overnight like that. So
Yeah.
it's not. It's certainly. I hope
It
that didn't. It didn't come off the wrong way, and just emphasizing that it's a lot of kind of blood, sweat, and tears that went into it, and a lot of time and energy that. For the most part, it just goes back to let's just keep sticking with what we're doing and not worry so much about the kind of copycats that come up. There must be
But if we've ever worried about them, it's never been productive. It's always
Exactly.
been at our own detriment, and it's
Exactly.
been emotionally upsetting, and just it wastes time, and then you end up having to leave that behind anyway. So. If they're going to go out there and do something, then they're going to do whatever they're going to do, but we just keep our eyes on the prize.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay, so you were saying earlier that your business was basically fragmented across the universe. Who was the company before you that was who's this voices.com? Who was it that went, oh no,
I think there's
what's voices.com doing that what do we gotta do now?
Yeah, there was a company in 1996 called voicebank.net, and they were they were a kind of, think of it like the Yahoo directory, if you remember way back in the day where it was lists of links.
Yes.
And so this was a directory
Of agents.
And kind of controlling that old world of agencies and big production companies. And we were, I guess akin to maybe a Google or a Facebook or an eBay, right? A marketplace where suddenly anyone can kind of connect with anyone, and you can sign up free, and you can that was kind of shocking to them. So I think there was a precursor online, and before that it would just be kind of again the traditional kind of talent agency that was probably most concerned with our arrival on the scene, so to speak. And there's actors unions in the States and in Canada that I think as much as we've tried to work with them and partnered with them, it certainly hasn't been reciprocal. I think they just feel threatened that we're kind of just the new way of doing business that threatens their old business model. And so kind of goes back to okay, you don't want to work with us, that's fine. Whether it's competition or people that we were actually trying to partner with, and if we get rejected, and it's that's fine, we're just going to keep plowing ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
And then and then we can chat afterwards as well too.
Yeah, that's true. You guys can fight over it.
Yeah.
I've already asked the questions.
Go ahead.
YouTube, yeah.
mentioned when you started out that you already had one child.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're bootstrapping the startup. You also mentioned that you didn't have always enough to pay yourselves.
Yeah.
How did you make that work?
I think there was a moment, I remember we had 4, maybe 5 employees where for what it was a horrible decision, and we kind of vowed we would never do that again, where we said, I'm like, hun, we're still handwriting paychecks. I'm like, all right, here's our paychecks for this, this week. Like, we finally kind of got on this 2-week payroll cycle, and I'm like, but we can't cash them. And that was the moment where and so Steph was like, so when can we cash them? I'm like, don't know if we're ever going to. And then it was like, well, then why are we writing ourselves checks that we can't cash? And we realized, well, why are we, and this is going to sound, very, sad in a certain way, but why are we paying people on the team that we clearly can't afford if we can't even provide for, the family in a sense? And so I think it was just, in a certain degree, some misaligned priorities. And so that was, I think, a real painful
Well, if I could
point.
add to it, because it isn't necessarily the whole
Mhm.
bit. I think at the time we were employing someone in particular who really wasn't good at their job,
Mhm.
and instead of being the bad guy and firing them, we didn't have the heart to, and we thought they would get better at what they were doing, but they were costing us money, and we said to ourselves, we will not, continue to pay someone who isn't even, doing a great job or
Mhm.
making their own way and not pay ourselves.
Yeah.
Why are we paying someone who is not cutting it
Mm-hmm.
when we are, sacrificing our paycheck so that we can keep employing that person?
Mm-hmm. So I just understand, okay, we're enabling bad behavior and we're paying the price.
Because we didn't want to confront them about their, so
Exactly.
you always have to, what is it, you take a long time to hire, but fire fast. How was it said?
Hire slow, fire fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, I think that was probably the moment where we're after that, we're always make sure that we can, we can just pay ourselves first, which is kind of it sounds, again, very cliche, but entrepreneur rule number 1 is pay yourself first before everything else, because you got to be able to kind of make sure that you're still in the game, because if you're not in the game,
No
then
one's in the
then
game.
no one's in the game. Yeah. Great question. Last one.
Sure, okay.
Yeah.
I just thought about, I work for that fitness headquarters here in town, and just a lot of the things you said sort of reminded me of the culture as well, because we're also London-based.
Mm-hmm.
Still solely owned by Patch, and then one thing around me especially is the emphasis on culture.
Mm-hmm.
So we, for example, have a lot of posters hanging around with our core values and our vision, and we have now over 12,000 employees, so it becomes obviously we need posters or media like this to keep the vision alive, because if you have 10 people, it's very easy to keep a culture alive. If you have 12,000 or 10,000, even with 45, it becomes a little more challenging.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned the concept of sort of, I will label it crowdsourcing your own culture. So you ask the team as to what is our culture.
Yeah.
Now that you're at over 40 employees, how do you make sure this culture stays alive? How do you adjust it? How do you communicate within your own company?
Yeah, so there's a couple kind of, I guess, very practical tools, and I'll run through these quickly. They're really kind of platforms, if you will, which is the Daily Huddle. We started this when, again, it was 4 or 5 people, but it's a team meeting every day right before lunch, which is, I call it the 5-minute information blast, which is an update across good news. Are we in the newspaper? Did we just hire somebody? Did we order some new equipment? What's happening that's good? We run through our numbers, so all the key performance indicators are written on this giant board. Yeah, they're all in Salesforce.com, but we want to kind of put the ink to the clear board and make it tangible. Again, the idea of making your business visible. We run through systems, so we say systems break and people don't. So it's never somebody's fault that something's not working. It's usually a miscommunication. And then we end up with there's some other items, but we'll end up with a word of thanks or a joke or something along those lines. So the people who are running that, it's not necessarily Stephanie and I. It's we kind of look for these culture carriers, if you will, kind of the internal champions of the business. And the culture carriers are going to be like everyone kind of knows. They've either been around or they're like the upfront, outspoken people who tend to kind of have a lot of enthusiasm. So that's kind of how, I mean, if you were to ask, someone like, is there an event that happens that kind of defines the culture? Like, it would be the daily huddle. And then we supplement that with like a more kind of elaborate, team meeting once a month called the rally. And so we have these huddles and we have these rallies. And like those are the kind of key moments where we can reinforce like where are we going and what are the results being and here's what's changing. And that's like the communications venue that we use. And those are the two things that we kind of instill culture. Mm-hmm.
Cool. So I think we will end it there.
Mm-hmm, sure.
I do want to quickly say a big thank you to 3 Ring Video for coming and videotaping this, to Startup Grind for thinking London's as awesome as we think it is, to Google for thinking Startup Grind is awesome, and especially to you guys for taking time away from your family to come here and share with everybody, and you guys for coming.
All right. Awesome.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
That was some stuff.